So if we apply this to musical performance, it's exactly the same. Just like I mentioned in the last lesson regarding articulation, actually your performance, besides playing the notes on the score correctly, has a lot of room for secondary creation. But we must be especially careful. When we're expressing our creativity, we need to have a general set of standards. As mentioned last time, we can't go against the basic style of a piece. We can't play it in a way that's too far-fetched. For example, music from the classical period, including the Baroque era, places a lot of emphasis on the rhythm of strong and weak beats, like the common strong, weak, medium, weak pattern, which is 4/4 time, or strong, weak, weak, which is 3/4 time. This kind of rhythmic pulse of strong and weak beats was very important in the classical period, including the sonatinas and sonatas we play. In these pieces, it's absolutely crucial. No matter how we handle the phrasing, the logic of these strong and weak beats cannot be overturned. Of course, since the Romantic period, this rhythm defined by the time signature hasn't been quite as strict. Some composers would even intentionally avoid writing strong beats as strong and weak beats as weak. Sometimes they deliberately write the strong beat weak and the weak beat strong. For instance, a video on my channel about Chopin's Nocturne 48 No. 2 specifically discusses this topic. If you're interested, you can watch it on Bilibili. Another example is when we look at a whole passage from a macro perspective, you need to know where the climax is. It should feel like one continuous flowing thought. The preceding parts from measure 1 to measure 12 are all building up, and then in the middle of measure 12, at this highest note, that's our climax. In other words, dynamically, we need to do a crescendo to emphasize that feeling of a climax. For music to be expressive, the most important thing is contrast. It can't all be loud or all be soft, or there's no contrast. If you want a certain part to sound stronger, then you have to play the part before it a bit softer. It's just like size, it's a relative relationship. If you want something to look bigger, you have to compare it with something even smaller. If you want to emphasize something, you can't make everything a highlight. If everything is a highlight, then nothing is. Alright, having said all that, I'll now give you a way of thinking to use when you're practicing. When you're not sure how to approach phrasing or articulation for secondary creation, are there any versatile methods you can use right away? There certainly are. Let's look at this score together. Notice the direction of the right-hand melody. I've marked its ups and downs here with arrows for you. Usually, in the vast majority of cases, within a melody, when the notes go higher, we naturally perform a crescendo. When the notes go lower, we naturally perform a decrescendo. So, it sounds like this when played. Now, this kind of dynamic change is just one approach. It doesn't mean this is the only way to play it. There are many more details here worth examining. But with this approach, you at least have a general framework. You'll know the music's general direction, how the overall structure is arranged and distributed. Then, on this basis, you can design some more distinctive ways of handling it. Finally, let me add one more important detail. At the start of this lesson, I mentioned that articulation and phrasing overlap a bit. This is mainly seen in these slurred areas. In our last lesson on slurs, I mentioned lifting your hand at the end of the slur like this. Why? Because we want it to have a natural decrescendo effect. Instead of, it should be. Now we find that in our music there are many such slurs. As you can see, some of these slurs are longer, while others are shorter. When they're long, they're actually telling you clearly where the phrase ends. Like right here. So in English, a slur is sometimes also called a phrase mark. This is the reason for the overlap we mentioned. The last note of these slurs is always where we need to play a bit softer. Perhaps you've never paid attention to this while practicing before. Well, from now on, you can start focusing on it, on these slurs in your score. Are you giving the last note a proper finish? With a slight decrescendo. Once you've mastered this small detail, you'll find that phrasing comes naturally. Alright, that's all for today's lesson. Students, you can apply today's content to the pieces you're currently practicing. Try to analyze it, find the phrases, and look for that call and response feel. Experience the subtleties within this phrasing. I'm sure you'll find it very rewarding.